Welcome to Boombastic Health, where we challenge the business of healthcare and explore bold ideas that drive meaningful change. Each week, we bring you candid conversations with top experts, innovators, and leaders, exploring the latest trends and technologies shaping the future of healthcare. Join us and be part of the conversation in transforming healthcare.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Boombastic Health. Here with me, I have Paul Denslow, CEO and co-founder of IntusBio.
Thank you for having me. It's very nice to be here. And how are you enjoying the conference?
I'm loving it. It's been fantastic. Really what brings it to life, I think, are two things. One is just this whole ecosystem effect. A lot of these conferences are so niche, which can be nice because you find all the people in your specific area. But the better, I think, energy builder is where you have this whole ecosystem of people. The other one is, I'll say, I'm seeing so many promising ways to make healthcare more preventative and more proactive. And that is extremely exciting. And one of those areas is as it relates to the guts and the microbiome, right?
Absolutely. And that's why we're so excited to be here to have our GutID test here being represented in the exhibition. And, we see GutID has really been a very, very important tool for preventative health. We've all known for a very long time the gut plays a role in health outcomes, different diseases. There's been a decade and a half of research on this, but we just haven't seen the healthcare applications. And that's really being held up by the data and the testing. And GutID is really the solution for that. And with GutID and what the insights is generating, we now really, as a company, understand disease quite differently to how conventional healthcare thinks about it. Today, we're in a paradigm where you're healthy, then you're sick. The system's waiting for you to get sick. It diagnoses when you're sick. It treats when you're sick. That works. That's a way of doing things. But obviously, nobody wants to be sick, and getting sick is much more expensive than preventative care. So the way that we think about health outcomes now and disease is not that kind of step function where you suddenly get sick. It's much more of a linear progression where actually you're going through dysbiosis, where you have the wrong bacteria in the gut, and that can be the precursor for disease, and disease comes afterwards. So with GutID, you can start to look in that area before you have the disease and take preventive action, which makes it so exciting.
Okay, so the human system is this really complex place, right? And historically, we've had certain ways that we think about diagnostics, we think about proactive preventive care, we talk about lifestyle as it relates to diet and exercise, but we're now learning that there's this gut connection with everything. And it's still I'd say little understood. It's sort of like we've got all this ocean in the, around us, and we've explored so little of the oceans. And I feel like the microbiome is kind of that same mysterious thing. I'd love to hear from you. How can people quickly come up to speed on how important this is? Because I'll say one last thing about it. Mental health, we have this mental health, crisis.
Absolutely.
And people talk about it relates a lot to social media and all kinds of factors. But there's also this other side of it. Maybe it relates somewhat to our lifestyle, our food sources, and our microbiome, which I think is an area that connects to mental health.
Yeah. So we don't think of gut health being a mystery. It's a data problem to be solved. Simple as that. Like most of healthcare is a data problem. And for some reason, the microbiome falls into this kind of mystery territory. Well, it's not. I mean, it's cause and effect. Simple as that. And the reason why it's kind of in this mystery category is we haven't had the tools to see it. But now with GutID, with IntusBio's tools and our Titan One platform, we have the tools to see it. And it's not just me saying that. We're in over 40 different peer-reviewed publications, saying that we have this ability to generate high-resolution data to start unraveling, these relationships between the gut and other health outcomes. And so really it's not a mystery. We know that the gut is central to the body, both sort of physically and metaphorically, and that you have, these 2 million bacterial genes sat within the gut, which are hardwired, effectively almost like hardwired into your gut-brain axis, your gut autoimmune system, and so on. And some of the earliest adopters of the GutID test have actually been mental and behavioral health professionals, because they understand that there's this very strong connection. They see it because 60 or 70% of their patients who come in all have gut function issues. It's a very, very high part of that population who has gut function issues. So they just see that, they want to fix that. But they also have this sense that actually there's a bigger thing going on, and that gut disorder, that gut dysbiosis, is driving some of these behavioral issues. And so with GutID, they have a measure of gut health. They can track the changes. They can track the intervention and the benefit of the intervention. And it gives people a very, very clear insight and hard data and a gut health score in the report to actually finally go from, well, how do you feel? Do you remember how you felt? To something much harder and data-driven, which makes a big difference. Like this gamification. People want to see their score go up. You show them a report when they were unwell, when they had bad gut function or the worst mental health times, and then show them a report today where they've seen that improvement, and it makes something much more solid than it has been before. But regarding like what you mentioned around diet, is that having an impact? Is that helping drive the mental health crisis within young people? I would also add to that the early onset crisis of cancer, where 4 or 5 generations ago, nobody below 50 got cancer. There are now teenagers dying of cancer, of colorectal cancer, which is just 4 or 5 generations, unbelievable change. So absolutely, we're firmly in the belief that these societal changes, these macro changes, have really disrupted the relationship between your human body and your human you and your bacterial you, and the wrong bacteria are starting to grow, and we're starting to see that now and understand that, and that this change within us is really causing these mental health and disease changes as well. That's what we really are starting to see. And we're very excited because we have the data to further explore that and further understand that.
So the microbiome analysis that you're doing, this GutID test, is it something that primary care is the right place to start providing that? Or where is that distribution point where you're seeing patients get access?
Absolutely. So we have a direct consumer platform. You can go to gutid.com. You can buy the test today. And that's great. Where we're seeing the early adoption, as I mentioned before, behavioral health professionals, and then functional health, dietitians, nutritionists. They're the folks who are putting the levers which really impact the microbiome around, probiotics, prebiotics, diet changes, etc. That's how you can really influence for the better your microbiome. And they have that too.
Yes. Well, in my functional medicine pharmacist who I work with, who just happens to be my business partner's wife. She was a pharmacist turned functional medicine person because she saw people getting all these medications and realized like this maybe isn't the only way to help treat people. I believe she has me do the GutID test.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I had heard of you guys already, which is I think awesome. So we also have on the other side of the ledger antibiotic. And whenever you get an antibiotic now, people talk about, hey, you should also take some kind of a probiotic. And this relates to microbiome, right?
That does, absolutely. And this goes back to the data question because, we're sort of, which antibiotics should you take without having a really good understanding of what you have wrong? And obviously, it's great to avoid antibiotics if you can, but obviously you need to take them. Right? They do have a positive use, but they shouldn't be taken kind of, freely or willy-nilly on a whim. And then, what's the right probiotic, right? So what we see now is, testing your microbiome every year. Now there's a high resolution, high accuracy test to do that. To know your baseline is really important. That's really, really essential. Then if you are sick and something is wrong, you can, take an antibiotic, perhaps you test again to see what's wrong to help direct the, that antibiotic, which one to take. And then if you have the baseline, you can then understand what it is you're doing, what you've damaged, how to get back there and which probiotics to take. So that's what this brings. Like it goes from guesswork and like hope to actually seeing if the probiotics actually make a difference, to seeing what your baseline, knowing your baseline, seeing the impact of both positive interventions like probiotics, potential dietary changes, or potentially negative interventions like antibiotics have done. And then you can guide yourself back there.
So I read recently that coffee actually is an excellent source of support for your microbiome. Is that true?
We haven't done that.
Kind of messy. Yeah. I mean, how you read these stories all the time. Like on one month, coffee is terrible for you. The next month, it's well for you.
Again, like we have this unique platform and this unique resolution data to answer questions like that. And I've had some wackier ones than just coffee. So
okay, all right. I'm trying to keep it PG.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but again, it's a data problem, right? And so what you found with pre-existing tests is they all use very similar technologies. There's like 3 buckets of technology people use. You'll see things like shotgun metagenomics, you'll see 16S mentioned, you'll see PCR mentioned. And what we know is that they've really helped drive understanding of the microbiome, those technologies, but it hasn't got us down the final mile to real clinical actionability. And we have a very unique test, which is high throughput, which means we can run at scale, which means we can collect lots of samples and then with our AI-powered tools, we can then start to really extract some very meaningful insights from this data. Because you got to get the right data, which we know we can generate, but then you have to have the right analysis to actually make understanding. And then we can find out, if coffee does make a difference or not. But we need to find some volunteers willing to give up their coffee for a while.
Right.
Do that. It's probably quite hard.
It would be hard. So the advancement in AI, though, over this past 5 years or so, I assume has been a pretty big tailwind for what you guys are doing in your business, because humans don't have the capacity necessarily to do all this analysis on this much data. And what you folks have done to analyze the data and are doing, I assume it's trained on a lot of different data points that AI has processed.
Yes, absolutely. So, every sample is generating millions and millions of data points. And, to make sense of all of that, the more computational power you have, the better. But the more tools you have, and we have a very, very strong team. Both my co-founder, Mark Driscoll, who invented the underlying technology, the assay, the wet lab side of things, the Dan Fasulo, who really runs our bioinformatics and proprietary tools around that. That combination is really, really unique, but AI is really powering our ability to take in lots of samples, generate lots of data, and then really extract maximum value from that data.
And what was your background? You have a partner, it sounds like that was on the wet lab side and that more scientific side.
I was actually in finance. So I was in finance for a long time. And then I was on a kind of a career sabbatical where I was doing some angel investing, working with some smaller companies. And I started to really understand there was a very big gap between science and between healthcare. And as a normal sort of person, you don't really understand that as just a regular person. But I think there's been a big awakening, not just within me, but across for the pandemic. People really kind of woke up to really start to wonder why there's this big gap there. We've seen biohacking, longevity. People start to take their health care into their own hands. The biggest gap between science and healthcare was really the microbiome. And as I went on this sort of journey of investing, some consulting, and I'd always had an entrepreneurial itch. I met Mark, and he played a leading role in the invention of next generation sequencing. So he was really the person that led the team behind the GS20, the first of the NGS sequences, which was a very, very big deal. And Mark had realized there was this big problem as well, that the microbiome had to be solved. And it was a data problem ultimately, but you had to go back to first principles, start again, because we knew the path we'd been down wasn't giving us the answers. So he'd worked with the technology, he had the technology. And then when we connected, I had this kind of finance, big data platform experiences. And I really saw that technology was marketed, invented very special, was something that we could bring forward and really quickly get to market by GutID and a wellness test. And then also with our collaborations, we could do something very, very special.
So there isn't a single listener that we have who should not be doing the GutID test.
I genuinely agree with that. I mean, the gut microbiome is a key driver of health outcomes. Hippocrates said 2,000 years ago, all disease begins in the gut. And it seems like it's pretty much right. It was NGS. And that's the reason why the microbiome has only been we're only aware of in the last 15 years, because it took NGS, the power of NGS, to start to even have a scratch the surface of the amount of life and bacteria which is going on in there. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have a gut function issue, absolutely. But if you're really interested in just optimizing your health in wellness, get that baseline, get tested, start to track this. It is the ultimate longevity or the ultimate disease prevention test that speaks to so many diseases.
So as part of the GutID report that you get, it helps you know what to do about it. So, what's good if you don't know what to do?
Absolutely. So the report contains recommendations as well. We don't sell supplements. We're not trying to sell a subscription or supplements. We stand behind the data. The data speaks for itself. So we're giving you the data so you understand your microbiome, what you have within your gut, to unravel what is going on within you. We give recommendations around where you have issues, ways to address those issues. And we have lots of people who take the report and run with it themselves, or consumers or individuals. And we have lots of practitioners, especially functional health practitioners, who are really seeing this as a very, very important tool within their toolbox now, to just start to understand what is going on within their patients. And really, once you've seen this test and this report, you can't unsee it, because that means the next patient who walks through the door, you're wondering, well, geez, they've got an autoimmune issue, or geez, they're complaining about joint pain, or they're complaining about inflammation, or they're complaining about gut function or reflux. How can you try and address any of those sorts of issues without having a test to see what's going on in the gut, because that's likely the root cause. And so, once people start to use the test, it becomes very, very common for them in their practice.
And this is cash pay. That's
Already cash pay. You can use your FSA as well to pay, actually FSA to pay for it as well, or to claim for it. And we're looking. We have conversations with a variety of people now for employer plans and the like, to rapidly scale the test and get the test into more and more people, more and more people to benefit the test.
And is that really the last big knothole you need to squeeze through as you look to scale this?
Yeah, for the wellness test, that's correct. Absolutely. That's the way to get to scale. And then the other, where we then have the next kind of focus will be on these disease-specific diagnostics.
Okay.
And again, like, it's not just diagnosing cancer, because there's lots of tests to diagnose cancer now. It's, you leveraging this disease continuum, like I mentioned before, and getting into that prevention window right before the disease, if not earlier, where we keep people with microbiomes healthy and we can steer them away from some of these outcomes. And again, there's certain bacteria which are known, like Fusobacterium, which is known to be a cancer driver. There's a lot of understanding around other bacteria associated with diseases, but our take is a healthy microbiome, healthy you, effectively.
Yeah.
If you get that right, you're going to be getting a lot of other things right as well.
Gives you a good foundation.
Absolutely.
So having, say, like some type of a toxic type of bacteria in your gut, and then doing nothing about it or just ignoring it, it's sort of like back when people used to think, oh, all this smoke, and I don't know, maybe it's not going to hurt me. Like, it's ultimately, so this is going to hurt you.
And it's a bit like also like with heart disease, things like that, right? I mean, one more year of a bad lifestyle, may or may not make a difference, right? But 10 more years will.
Right.
And so if you're walking around with, bacteria, which we know is, producing these potential toxins, that's going to accumulate, and that's going to eventually show itself. So again, it's like, just if you keep it healthy, you'll be healthier. And with more data, more time, we'll know to what degree that is true. But we certainly have a very strong conviction today that is true to some degree. So anyone, again, interested in wellness, longevity, this is like foundational stuff, as you said.
Well, I really appreciate you being here, Paul. I think what you guys are doing makes a big impact on health. And I appreciate the fact that you've got this combination of science and finance. And because frankly, if there's no capital, if there's no ability to scale the business, these scientific breakthroughs don't necessarily get out there to the people.
And working with Mark is a real privilege, because we are very complementary in our skill sets. And but you're right, it takes two people, and we're lucky to found each other.
Awesome. Well, keep doing what you're doing, and thank you everybody for tuning in for another episode of Boombastic Health here at Health 2025. Paul Denslow, co-founder and CEO of Intis Bio, who's making a huge impact on gut health. Check out GutID.com. We'll see you at the next episode.
Thanks much.